ever wondered why you have your mother eyes but your father's hair? Or why a trait can disappear for one generation and suddenly reappear in the next? Look around at a football stadium, in your classroom, or even in your own family. Humans show incredible variation in eye color, hair type, and many other traits. But how are these traits actually passed from parents to offspring? Is heredity like mixing paints? Or is it more like drawing cards from a deck of genes? In this video, we'll travel back to an abbey garden where monk named Mendel uncovered the basic rules of inheritance. Rules that still explain genetics today, from pea plants to human traits and genetic diseases. Let's uncover how really genes work. Let's dig in. Good morning, people. Today we're going to study about Gregor Mendel, a father of genetics, and how he used the scientific method to discover the laws of inheritance. Laws of inheritance. So let's get started. Before just starting, okay, I want to talk about something with you. We'll talk about flowers first. Okay, flowers. Now see, this is a flower. Okay, you know, in flower there are several parts. This is like basic anatomy of flower. This part of a flower, it is known as sepal. Okay, this part, pink part, we can see that it is called as petals. Okay, now we're shifting toward reproductive parts and the part of plants. Okay, for the reproductive parts, this is female reproductive system in plants, which is known as ovary. Again, next is style, and the last one is known as stigma. These three conclude as together known as pistil, female reproductive part. Okay, now let's talk about the males also. This is called an anther. This and this is called an filament. It is joining toward anther. Together, this contributes as stamen. It is a male reproductive parts of a plant, we can say, or flower. Now the question arises is, okay, how do plants divide, or we can say produce progeny or next generation? Answer to that is it is done by sexual reproduction, and it is also involved the process of thing called as pollination. Plant use this method to divide. I've told you earlier, like the flowers also have male sex organs are known as stamens, and they have females also, which are known as pistils. Now let's go in more depth. Okay, anther is a part of a stamen that contains what? It contains what? It contains pollen. Pollen is what? Pollen is male gametes in flower. Okay. Now pollen should be moved to part of pistil, which is known as stigma, for a reproduction to take place. Okay. After that, the pollen undergoes this thick lining, which is style, and it later on reaches to ovary, where it divides and becomes ovules, or where ovule is found, and after they fertilize, they form again what, zygote, and it again form an adult plant. That's how the mitosis take place. Fertilization or meiosis take place. No, I told you earlier. Then zygote form it is seed. Now this thing can be done in two ways. First is self pollination, which means from a single plant. The each own pollen fertilizes its own ovules. It is known as self pollination. And next is cross pollination, where we can say wind animals move different pollen from a different plant or flower to another, is called as cross pollination. This is a good thing. It's allow genetic diversity in plants. Yeah. So now we are going back to a chapter again. So now the question arises, like, why Mendel chose pea plants only? Around the 18th century, Mendel started beginning experiment on the garden pea plants. Around, we can say, 1815 he started experimenting on pea plants. It has three reasons. First reason is, the pea plants show clear difference. How? Pea plant has purple flower, and also some plants of pea have white flowers. Secondly, you know they easily compare, like some are tall, some are short. It is a character between them, like the flower color. Okay, it is a character, and a specific form of character, like purple flower or white flower, it is known as trait. That's it. Okay. Second reason why I choose them: short life cycle. you know Pea plants generally grow like very fast and produce many offspring. Okay, which gives the power to Mendel, like he allowed and studied many generation of pea plants, and also collected large amount of data. Third reason, he has a control over fertilization. As I told you earlier, pea plant contain what? Stamens, carpel, or we can say pistil. Normally, the pea plants do self fertilization or self fertilize, but to control mating, what did Mendel do? He removed the pollens. He removed the stamens before the pollen is formed, and secondly, added stamen, or we can say pollen, from the another plant by hand picking, or we can say manually. This allowed him to get ensured, like he know the exact parents of every offspring now. Now consider this as stamen, and this part is pistil. This is a purple flower of a pea plant. Pea plant. Same here as it is white flower of pea plant. Okay. So now what did Mendel do here? He cut the stamen from the purple plant and take the stamen from the white flower and this crossing over. We can say he did mating, self mating, or we can say he did mating manually by hand, by pollination, and transferred the sperm bearing sperm bearing pollen to purple flower ovary. Now then what happened? Pollination is done. Then he waited for the pollinated carpel to mature into pod. The pea plant pod is matured, and then he planted seeds from the pod, and then he noticed that the next generation that is formed all have purple flowers. Now, before going on further, I would like to talk about something which is a good topic here. You can say true breeding plants. Now, what does this mean? This means that like when a plant self pollinates himself for many generations and always produces offspring identical to itself, it is known as true breeding plant. Okay. Now, for example, you can say a true breeding purple flower always produces purple flowers. Okay. Now, this removes the confusion from the results. Now, let's get head back to here again. Now, we can see in this Mendel experiment, what happened here. I told you earlier, he cut out the stamen from a purple flower and take the stamen from the white flower and like transfer the pollen to the purple flower ovary, and then the pollination is done. It is like cross pollination. Then the pea plant formed, the seed formed here, and like he took the seed from the pea pod and then he planted. Then he planted them and he observed that all the plants have purple flowers, which is quite noticing. Okay. Now this thing, when he like crossed over purple flowers into from white flowers, it is called as hybridization. Okay. Mendel do what? He Mendel crossed two breeding plants, true breeding plants with different traits. We term this as first generation or we can say parent generation. Okay, now these are the hybrids that are formed after mating from from the parent generation. It is known as F1 generation or first filial generation. Filial in Latin is known as son, Latin language. Okay, these plants are called as hybrids. Now, what happened next? In the next part, he did that. He did self pollination or cross pollination of the purple flowers. Now, what he observed here is around 705 were purple plants and 224 white flower plants were born, which is quite interestingly different. It is very unique. Now, he did something revolutionary. He counted the number of offspring, and also he analyzed the result using ratios and mathematics. By studying like thousands of plants, he identified patterns in inheritance. From there on, he gives us two laws of inheritance. First one is law of segregation, and the second is law of independent assortment. Now we'll talk about it in the next lecture. I just write it here. This generation was F2 generation. You can say next generation. Bye for today, guys.